What's up, everybody? Welcome to yet another live episode of Tap Outs and Touchdowns. It's your guy Bully Rye back at it again, talking a lot of football. We've got three leagues to talk about right now. Without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome back Banker Bill, the football show co-host for the show and amateur football guru, as it says in his bio here. Bill, how's it going, bud?
What's going on, man? It's a busy Wednesday afternoon. Thursday really when you hear this, or unless you're jumping in live.
unless you're watching live. And thank you if you're watching live. You can watch the show live on YouTube, youtube.com/tapouts and touchdowns, facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns, and the Twitter page at tapouts and TDs. You can watch it in any of those platforms. A lot of stuff going on. You mentioned a busy Wednesday. It's been a busy week for me. I'm just getting back in from being out of town up in Sevierville, Tennessee. And if you are watching live, you're seeing a Hawaiian shirt right now. A week from Friday, Banker Bill and I are going to be taking a little cruise with his fam and a couple friends, and we're excited about it. Bill's not quite ready to be in cruise mode. I am. Yeah. Bill's in golf.
Sorry. That's right.
Yeah. So let's hop right into the show. We're not going to do any commercial breaks. If you caught the wrestling show this week, there weren't any commercial breaks. Make sure if you come in and want to watch the show, make sure to leave a comment. We can get to it on the air, but we're not going to do any commercial breaks. We're going to get right into the show here. Start off with NFL news and notes. Primarily the biggest news that broke this week would have to do with Odell Beckham Jr. finally signing with a team. He was scheduled to meet with the Jets. And the Baltimore Ravens threw the bank at him. What was it, like an $18 million, upwards of $18 million contract that they were signing, getting him signed up for. Bill, first impressions from Odell Beckham Jr. signing with the Ravens.
I think you can see I'm over here rolling my eyes at that one, right? The guy hasn't played football in a while. We don't know what they're going to get from him. Yep. It's just to throw $18 million at a guy that, tore his ACL in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Wow. But okay. I guess you're trying to keep Lamar around. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, reminder, if you're watching the show live, make sure you leave us a comment. We'll read it on the air and we'll get you involved in the show. We like to be interactive here. But yeah, Bill, I think my first impression was, well, who's going to throw him the football now? Lamar Jackson doesn't want to be there. This could be a symbol of Baltimore wanting to get him weapons. They did trade away Marquise Goodwin earlier. I guess it was last year they traded him away. Or I'm getting it wrong. Marquise Goodwin played for San Francisco. Hollywood Brown was traded away. That's who he was traded away prior to last season. And so there wasn't really anybody outside of Mark Andrews to throw the ball to, in my opinion. Right. And so, yeah, you've got him some weapons here. But I say some weapons, a weapon, but I don't remember the last time we saw Odell Beckham Jr. Play a full season in the NFL. We got the first comment of the day. PJ Steven from the Wrestling Show. Football will be more entertaining if the football was on a pole. If you missed the wrestling show, we talked about.
I think I deserve that. I think so.
Yeah, on
we could handcuff the football to some of the players.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, handcuff the ball to a couple players. Go back and listen to the wrestling show from this week. We talked about some of those gimmick matches where wrestlers were handcuffed to each other and objects were suspended on a pole. It'll be time will tell if this Odell Beckham Jr. signing is going to bear fruit with the Baltimore Ravens.
I think it's a Hail Mary. It's a Hail Mary. Not, I think you're throwing what would be considered a good wide receiver. Like you said, he was supposed to go to the Jets. The Jets were looking into that. Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay, man.
But, he had asked for him to be signed, and the Jets were trying to comply, and now the Ravens take that and steal it away. So I think they're just trying to make Lamar Jackson happy. But like you said, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. What a disaster. The Ravens don't usually do weird stuff. That's usually, when Ozzie Newsome with the GM, and he was usually this is just weird. This is not Ravens stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah, there's no telling if Lamar Jackson is going to refuse to play this year. Like, he hasn't signed the franchise tender. He's requested a trade over a month ago. There's been no movement. So it'll be interesting to see if he pulls a Carson Palmer and just doesn't play and waits to be traded away next season. That being said, We're still waiting on the move for Voldemort to the New York Jets. There's been a lot of visits happening this week, preparing for next week's NFL draft, and that's what we're going to talk about next because there's a lot of questions on who's going where. There was a big trade made by the Detroit Lions.
It's 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks.
Is it two? It's
2 weeks. It is actually while we are on.
Yeah, okay. So 2 weeks from now.
Oops.
No, it's okay.
No, I mean, oops. Like, why did we go on a cruise?
Yeah. The Lions traded away former first round cornerback Jeff Okudah to the Falcons for a 5th round pick. They did sign a bunch of defensive backs in free agency. They're being projected to take Bijan Robinson at 18 overall. They'll be the highest running back drafted based on the experts mock drafts. That's really the only news we've got left is where are players going. Everybody's making visits. Bill, do you see any splashes coming out of the NFL draft? And if not, who do you see the Panthers taking at number 1?
That's a good question. I think it's Bryce Young. I think it should be probably going to be Bryce Young. I still think that's really the highest graded quarterback in the draft. Should he be? I don't know. I think CJ Stroud did enough in the game against Georgia in the was it a semifinal game that I feel like we saw more from him in that game than we had seen in a long time, and that reminds me of Justin Herbert when he was going to be the number 1 overall pick in his junior season out of Oregon, goes back for his senior year. He falls down draft boards because he didn't have a great season in his senior season, but had a fantastic Rose Bowl that season. I believe beating, was it Stanford that they beat in the Rose Bowl? And he basically carried the team.
It wouldn't have been Stanford because they're both in the Pac-12.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Who was it? Maybe Penn State? It's good. I don't know. I'm not sure. Stanford you're right. That was dumb. But yeah, he played unbelievable in the Rose Bowl that year. And I don't want to say fixed his draft stock, but I think he had fallen a little farther than 6 where he ended up going. So I feel like Stroud could be in that conversation now with Bryce Young because of that game. He played unbelievably well against Georgia and almost beat Georgia kind of single-handedly because they stunk against Michigan early in the year. That team did not look good. And they put up a whole bunch of points. So I don't know. So anyway, CJ Stroud could be in that conversation. And then I keep hearing these Anthony Richardson things like, oh, he's so cute. Like, no, he's terrible. He's terrible. Like, look at his tape. He's bad. Stop looking at how fast the man can run. I'm tired of hearing that. Oh, he hit the ball. He hit the ceiling with the ball. Oh, so do punters. I mean, that's all that you're going to see on the field when this guy's your quarterback is your punter. So stop it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be Bryce Young.
Interesting to note, I believe the Bucks hosted Will Levis from Kentucky. The Colts have hosted Will Levis from Kentucky. The Lions were set to host Hendon Hooker from the University of Tennessee. Maybe for a later round draft pick.
No.
A successor to Jared Goff. Hendon Hooker's got an arm, dude. What are you talking about?
Jared Goff's got another 5-6 years in him. Is Hendon Hooker going to be ready for it? He'll be out of his rookie contract. Yeah, that's why. Jared Goff played great going down the stretch last year.
Listen, as a fan of the Lions and as a fan of Jared Goff, I'm with you. I don't think he's played bad.
Bad.
And be a good, decent backup, a guy that can sling it in case anything does happen to Jared Goff.
You don't look for guys that are possible starters, which some people think Hendon Hooker might be. And I don't think you look for that as your backup.
I mean, listen, they also hosted and they threw an offer at Teddy Bridgewater. We talked about that off the air.
You can
that the Lions are looking. I think they're just looking for options in case the worst case scenario happens with Jared Goff. Maybe he doesn't re-sign at the end of his contract, or they're teased too much. The Lions have been very frugal with their money to get what they want for this team. So time will tell. That's all we've got for the NFL news.
You don't want to talk about your 3rd overall draft pick getting. I mean, you said it, but then you just were like, "Oh, go away."
Oh no, I mean Jeff Okudah.
What happened?
Clearly, he wasn't. He wasn't.
Will he be
part of the future plans?
Else? Will he be anything anywhere else? 3rd overall. That's ridiculous. The guy had a massive amount of talent. Clearly,
they gave him up for a 5th round draft pick to Atlanta.
Terrible.
That tells you
3 years into his career.
If anything, that tells you what the Lions thought of him. And so it'll be interesting to see if he can turn his career around in Atlanta. I hate to see him go. I thought there was definitely
Potential.
the potential for him
Yeah.
there, but well, like I said, time will tell.
That's a massive bust, though, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, he was only given 2 or 3 years in Detroit, so I'm not sure if you can consider him a bust, considering they just didn't give him the chance, or that we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But I know they clearly were ready to move on, and they did.
Yeah.
I think the biggest news coming this weekend in football is not XFL Week 9. It's not the NFL Draft 2 weeks from now. It's the start of the USFL season. The USFL is coming back 2023, the second consecutive year. Listen, we're shooting off the hip from this stuff because it's really hard to follow some of the players that are playing in the USFL this year. I can go down the list of the coaches in the USFL if we wanted to, but some different faces, some new faces in the USFL.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can start us off there. Birmingham Stallions, led by Skip Holtz of East Carolina fame, the son of Lou Holtz, former coach of Notre Dame and the University of South Carolina. The Houston Gamblers are led by Curtis Johnson after Kevin Sumlin resigned at the end of last year. Kevin Sumlin, former coach of the Texas A&M Aggies, who was let go so that Texas A&M can go and sign Jimbo Fisher, where Jimbo Fisher can get a number 1 recruiting class and have a losing record the same season. Next up, Memphis Showboats, led by Todd Haley of NFL fame. The Michigan Panthers, led by Mike Nolan after Jeff Fisher resigned at the end of last season. The New Jersey Generals, led by Mike Riley, the coach of the year in the USFL in 2022. The New Orleans Breakers, led by John DiFilippo after Larry Fedora resigned at the end of last season. The Philadelphia Stars, led by Bart Andrews, and the Pittsburgh Maulers, led by Ray Hurton. Kirby Wilson led the Pittsburgh Maulers last year to the league worst 1-9 record. That's a lot of names. I think it should be mentioned, Bill, like, what are we doing with the names of the teams in the USFL? Like, I know that seems pretty dumb, like, and a dumb topic to talk about, but like the XFL's got some like legitimate names. They've got like legitimate uniforms. Like, it's something to draw viewers to it. And like the Pittsburgh Maulers, the Birmingham Stallions.
The Pittsburgh Maulers rebranded sort of this season. They actually changed their logo colors to fall in line with the other Pittsburgh sports teams. So if you see the logo, there it is. It's right there above. Yeah. If you look at that logo, obviously you can see it looks like now the Steelers, the Penguins, and the Pirates with the black and yellow scheme. So they're trying to fall in line with what they have going on now. They're going to play their home games in Canton, Ohio, because the USFL is ridiculous. And the way that they're going to save money, and we've talked about them having home stadiums, that actually wasn't true. And you and I have talked about this off the air, but they're going to have 4 locations that they're going to play games in. And Pittsburgh is hoping that I think it's like 90 minutes away. I think I read somewhere that Canton, Ohio is 90 minutes away from Pittsburgh. They're hoping that the Pittsburgh fans will drive down to Canton, Ohio to go to the games and create a home environment atmosphere. So that's the USFL's thinking.
I think the reason that nobody watched the USFL last year was because it was boring.
Unless you were a Birmingham, what are they? Stallions? Yeah, the Birmingham Stallions fan. They were the only people. They played all the games in Birmingham. That is one of the, we'll call it a pod. That's one of the home locations. It's 2 teams playing in each location. Birmingham will have one of them. Detroit, Canton, Ohio, and I forget what the 4th one was. Memphis. That's right.
Memphis is they're the USFL, like Bill said, are playing in 4 hubs.
Yeah.
Instead of having home teams like the XFL has had.
So technically 2 teams get, I guess Michigan Panthers, that would be another one. So really 3 teams get home games. I mean, Detroit's in Michigan, so they didn't say where they were from. So that's technically a home game as well.
Yeah.
But Canton, Ohio, that really they're looking for the Pittsburgh crowd, and they didn't have a place to play games in Pittsburgh. So the rest of you, sorry, you like the Houston Gamblers, you get to play wherever we put you. I guess that's probably going to be in Birmingham.
I think the other bad part about it, Bill, is there's not a lot of notable players in the USFL. Now I say that knowing full well that South Carolina has 7 players in the USFL. Clemson has about 10 players in the USFL. Even the Citadel, I believe Coastal Carolina has a couple of players each. And I love my Gamecocks. You know, admittedly on this show, I will always be a homer for my Gamecocks.
We know.
But there's not a lot of notable names. I gave you the 2 that I pulled up, Bill, and then I know I told you I was going to let you take the reins of this, and I will. The 2 names that stood out to me, drafted by the Houston, what do we call them? I already forgot what they're called now.
Gamblers.
The Gamblers. The Houston Gamblers.
Yeah.
Quarterback Chase Bryce, a former Clemson Tiger, former Duke Blue Devil, App State starting quarterback, threw for a school record 3,337 passing yards in 2021. He will be more than likely the starting quarterback in Houston. And if you go down to Birmingham, Malik Cunningham, a quarterback from Louisville, in his career, 7,889 passing yards, 62 touchdowns, I believe. He has over 50 rushing touchdowns. I know he ranks second all-time in Louisville history for rushing touchdowns behind Lamar Jackson, who we spoke about talking the NFL. Bill, I know you've done a lot more research on the USFL than I've had the time to do. Give us your take on how the USFL draft went down, and based on what you've seen, you know, kind of what your maybe predictions might be, or just general thoughts on the USFL this coming season.
Well, the USFL draft is much different than, say, the XFL draft. The XFL draft, the players had to make themselves available to be drafted into the XFL. We have 2 quarterbacks that were starting quarterbacks for teams in the USFL last year that are now playing in the XFL because they decided they didn't want to go back to the USFL. That being Jordan Ta'amu, who's been fantastic for DC, and Luis Perez, who actually led the New Jersey Generals to a 9-1 record last year, and then decided he wanted to go to the XFL, and he's bounced all over. So that's obviously now playing in Arlington, where he started the season in Vegas. But the way that the USFL draft is actually kind of interesting. So what they end up doing is they scout the current crop of college players that are coming out right now. And they have, I guess there are expectations of which players would end up being undrafted free agents. And then they talk to those players and convince them, hey, you are not getting drafted in the NFL. We've talked to some GMs, and it's not going to happen, my friend. So would you like to try to increase, up your draft stock by coming and playing in the USFL and showing people what you're capable of doing with like talent, not talent you played against in college? So that's what the USFL draft was. It's not, and it's already happened. And it is basically, they drafted either seventh rounders would be the highest, but mainly undrafted free agents, guys they expected that would not be drafted in the upcoming NFL draft. Which is weird because they actually own the rights to them, even if, I think that just takes them out of the draft pool. I haven't read that far, but they basically own the rights to them. So they would play in the USFL this season. I think after the season's over, they could get picked up as a free agent.
So they're basically turning down eligibility into the NFL draft.
I think so. I think that's
in order to play
works.
in the USFL.
Yeah.
Like a prolonged training camp with real game time
kind of
moves. Yeah. A quick reminder, if you're watching the live stream, make sure you throw some comments out there. If you got any thoughts on what we're talking about, or any questions that maybe you want to answer on the show. We like the interaction. We get some interaction on the wrestling shows. Let's get some interaction on the football shows tonight. Yeah, listen, there was also one quarterback. I can't remember who he played for. It might have been let me pull it up here. McLeod, I don't know how you pronounce that name. Bethel Thompson, the quarterback for the Breakers.
Yep.
He was last year's, I believe, he led the CFL last year with 4,731 yards, 23 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, helped the Toronto Argonauts to the Grey Cup. So didn't play in the USFL, but played in the CFL last year, and helped win a CFL championship. Again, most of these skill players I don't recognize. If you go through as far as I don't know, as far as running backs and wide receivers, there's not a lot of names that stand out.
Well,
one guy, Zaquandre White, is on a roster. He played running back at South Carolina. I mean, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. I mean,
well, actually, there is some fun stuff that mainly happened in the draft. The first pick of the draft was a guy named Jarrett Horst. He was a Michigan State offensive tackle.
Yep.
Picked by the Michigan Panthers. But if you look at the stats for the guy that got picked second, now this guy's little. He's like 5'10". He's a quarterback. But he threw for 4,600, almost 4,700 yards, 60 touchdowns and 8 interceptions last year for Incarnate Word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's going to be interesting. Yeah, that's his career. I'm sorry. Those are his career stats for Incarnate Word. So, but he's really tiny. Apparently he's extremely athletic, and it sounds like they might want to move him to wide receiver, but we'll see what happens. You talked about Chase Bryce coming out of Appalachian State. He went third to the Houston Gamblers. Then there was an offensive tackle, went to the Memphis Showboats. Tyler Scott, wide receiver at Cincinnati, Ryan, he went fifth to the New Orleans Breakers. Dude started all 11 games for Cincinnati last year, caught 54 passes for 899 yards and 9 touchdowns.
Oh,
so
wow.
He was 19th. He was 19th in college football in receiving touchdowns.
Those aren't bad numbers.
Right. So he had 4 100-yard receiving games last year for Cincinnati, and Cincinnati was a decent team. So he's not terrible. Everybody else kind of picked offensive tackles. It's actually crazy. Like I think half the picks in the first round were offensive tackles.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of skill players that got took early. It was a lot of they wanted to bulk up their lines,
right?
Tackles, guards. I'm kind of going through down the list some of the rosters. Of course, I'm going to call it my game.
First pick of the first round, a guy named Tanner Morgan, quarterback out of Minnesota. He last season, in 2019, he set a school record for passing yards, 3,253, and touchdown passes with 30. And he has the single season completion percentage school record for 66.9% in 2022. He went 33-14 in all his games starting for Minnesota. So the dude has a ton of experience, and they expected him not to get drafted. So he's going to play quarterback for the Michigan Panthers. So doesn't seem like a bad pick. Somebody you can actually look at. That seems kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle Markaway is a tight end that you played at South Carolina, signed with or drafted by the Michigan Panthers, one or the other. A couple other Clemson Tigers for anybody that's listening local. Deion Kane is playing somewhere in the league. Zaquandre White played running back at South Carolina. He is somewhere in the league. It's hard to find information because the USFL, like at least the XFL has an app that you can go on to. The USFL does not.
Well, they probably will. I mean, we hope.
I mean, the thing is, if they would have done it, they should have done it last year, right? Like here's the ultimate gripe, and then we're going to move on to the.
I got another player for you though.
Let's hear it.
You remember Adrian Martinez?
Oh yeah, that's another name I have.
Quarterback for Nebraska, and then played last year at Kansas State. Yep. He was picked 15th overall in the draft by the New Jersey Generals.
Yeah, we'll see if he can get that starting job.
I would imagine he probably will be.
I mean, they drafted him to make him the starter, but a lot of guys in the XFL we thought were drafted to be starters and either fizzled out or didn't pan out. Right. I think my biggest gripe about the USFL this season is that like they've been broadcasting to directly compete with the XFL. The real football is back. Where this isn't some Hollywood knockoff, this, that, and the other.
Right.
Well,
it's kind of been BS. Yeah.
The XFL has had very entertaining football. The rule changes have been awesome. I can't wait to talk about the games this week because of some of the rule changes or the different rules that the XFL has this coming season.
Yeah.
But like, I'm telling you right now, if it's real football, you have home teams. You have 8 home teams.
Right.
And you play at those sites.
Right.
If it's real football, you get people excited about the league by talking about the rosters. You talk about who former players, whatever the case is, in the USFL. The USFL is clearly pigeonhole themselves as a training camp league for the NFL. A lot of these, I think Zaquandre White was on an NFL roster last year, but he never started. He didn't get any play time. A lot of these guys haven't. So to me, while the XFL seems like a decent minor league, a second chance league, if you will, the USFL seems like a training camp league and without home and home games, it's not exciting to me. I'm not looking forward to the USFL. We will watch it and hopefully be pleasantly surprised by the football, but they're going to have a hard time drawing viewers when the crowds for these games are just absolutely dead.
Birmingham will be good. Michigan might be good.
Yeah. I mean, listen, we also said that Vegas was going to win the XFL preseason. Absolutely.
That's not fair. Hey, by the way, I have to tell you this. The punter that punted for the most yards in NCAA history got drafted into the USFL this season.
He got drafted like early too, didn't he?
He was in let me go to the round. 8th round overall. My dad will like this one. Adam Korsak, punter from Rutgers.
How about that?
He's the 2022 Ray Guy Award winner for the best punter in the nation. He was also first-team All-American and holds the NCAA career record for punting yards with 15,318. And for some reason, they're like, dude, I know you're the best punter ever in college football, but you're not going to the NFL. So play in the USFL this season.
Yeah, let's pay you nickels compared to the dollars you'd be making in the NFL.
Yep.
And not to mention, let's let one of our teams take a very, very relatively early draft pick on drafting a punter that they must already be expecting to be bad on offense because they're going to need a superstar punter.
Yeah.
Bill, if I said we were going to go through any breaks, but generally we would take a break about this time in the podcast. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go straight into our next segment. And if you've been listening to football shows the last few weeks, that means that you guessed it. We're talking XFL Week 8. Probably one of the best weeks in the XFL so far this season. And we'll get to it in game 2 here. And just a reminder, if you're watching the live stream, first of all, thanks for joining us. Shout out to Tara. It looks like your sister was watching the stream at one point.
Heck yeah.
Jeff Bai and Jason Yenny, thanks for joining the show. And then PJ Steven obviously give us a shout out a little earlier, leaving the sole comment that we've got tonight. We're talking about XFL Week 8, and there was some really good football. Primarily because there were some teams that were not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs going into this week until now. Starting off the game 1, the Arlington Renegades taking on the Orlando Guardians. The Renegades squeak out an 18-16 win. Some quick stats to go through this game. Total yards, Orlando outgained Arlington 309-274. Arlington even led in penalties 13-8. And Arlington also led in rushing yards 91-25. If you've been listening to the show, you know I've been harping on the run game. Let's start off with Arlington because we see the debut of newly traded for quarterback Luis Perez. Has an average game. But with this win, Arlington essentially nothing. They eliminate Orlando from the playoffs, and they keep their hopes alive as they improve to 4-4. Bill, again, if you're looking at this, at the ticker across the screen, Luis Perez only had 190 yards passing, no touchdowns accounted for. But they did what they needed to do to shut down Quentin Dormany. Before we start talking about Orlando and how they collapsed in this game, what did you see from Arlington that, I don't know, dictates the next 2 weeks that you expect to see from them?
They still stink.
Yeah.
They're just not good. It's sad. I think Luis Perez makes them better. He's better than Drew Plitt, even though I beat the drum for Drew Plitt all season long. Sorry, buddy. Luis Perez is a better quarterback. So they'll be better, but they still stink. They didn't play all that well. They didn't do much on offense, which maybe was to be expected with Luis Perez getting his first start. But Orlando, I guess Arlington played good defense. Let's just say that. They really got after Dormady. So that ruined it for Orlando, and Orlando was done.
Absolutely. You mentioned they really got after Quentin Dormady. 5 turnovers for the quarterback that we were expecting to turn this around and lead Orlando to a possible playoff berth after having 2 of the best seasons of any quarterback in the XFL.
Games.
Quentin Dormady, what did I say?
Seasons.
Oh, games. Yeah,
you meant games of the season, yeah.
Games of the season.
He had arguably the best quarterback game of the season against DC, the best team in the league the week before, and then has arguably the worst game against a mediocre team Just
Yeah.
unfortunate. That's inconsistency, and that's the kind of stuff that doesn't get you on an NFL roster, which we thought might happen after that DC performance.
Yeah, he had 300 yards passing, but like I said, he also had 5 interceptions, including a drive where Orlando had scored late. Down 3, they go for a 1-point conversion to trust the defense to get the ball back, which they did. Only needing a field goal to win, Orlando is driving down the field, and Quentin Dormady takes a huge sack, fumbles the ball, and it secures the win for Arlington again. Orlando's sole
I cried
win.
tears.
I bet, man.
I
Listen,
was devastated.
Orlando has 1 win on the season,
It's like
and
being
it's
a
against the
Dolphins fan
best
all over
team in the
again.
XFL.
Yeah,
It makes no sense to me how, of all teams, Orlando was able to squeak a win against DC. Just
yeah. Well, I mean, that was a great game. I mean, they played great. Like they played the perfect game. That was as good as Orlando could possibly play, and they beat the best team.
Bill, the next 2 games on the docket were arguably the most entertaining games of the season.
Why did you skip the first game?
Did I skip the first game? I thought the first game was
Arlington, Vipers, and Battlehawks was the first game on Saturday.
Oh, I guess I did skip that game because I've got it next.
Are we? Yeah,
I've got it next. St. Louis is able to hold off the Vipers. The Vipers, unbeknownst to me before this game.
Hold off. Come back against the Vipers. They were down that whole game.
Well, yeah, they held them off in overtime, and we're getting there. The very first overtime game in the XFL's history. St. Louis is down this entire game. Let's go through some stats here because, again, with the first XFL game going to overtime, there's going to be some things that stand out. Total yards, Vegas outgained St. Louis 356 to 332. They also led in penalties 9-6. And they outgained St. Louis on the ground like crazy. 208 rushing yards to 86 for St. Louis. Again, you mentioned Vegas led this game 17-8 going into the fourth quarter, and St. Louis kicked a game-tying field goal with 15 seconds left. It is the first ever overtime in XFL history. And Bill and I love the format. Tell the fans about what the format looked like for this overtime, Bill.
So cool. You basically go for 2 from the 5-yard line, and they alternate. It's like a shootout in hockey. So you line up, you go for 2 from the 5-yard line. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, the other team comes in and tries. And you each get 3 shots, and it's best out of 3. Whoever gets more conversions in 3 tries wins the football game. It is freaking awesome. And like I said, it's just like having a hockey shootout, and it was super fun. It happened twice this weekend.
Yeah.
After never happening ever before.
Exactly. And yeah, hockey, soccer, they have that same sort of shootout format.
Yeah.
It's similar to college football overtime in a sense that at the third overtime, it becomes a 2-point conversion contest. Each team gets a shot. You get 3 attempts at a 2-point conversion in XFL overtime. If you are still tied after three attempts, then it becomes sudden death. We should also mention that if the offense going for the conversion is penalized for anything during that try, that is an automatic failure of the attempt. So pretty fun stuff here. Let's get into the individual teams here. Jalen McClendon did everything he could to try to propel Vegas for the win, but they just got shut down in the second half. Some big names made some splashes in this game. Martavis Bryant played a factor despite only having 1 reception in this game. He was targeted a lot by Jalen McClendon. Geronimo Allison, former Green Bay Packer, had himself a day, got himself a touchdown. If you're looking at the ticker again, Rod Smith, your starting running back, was only able to muster 3.9 yards per carry on the day. Obviously, again, Vegas was eliminated from the playoffs before this game, but they were looking to play spoiler because there is a 3-headed race of the 4 teams in the North, and St. Louis is trying to keep pace with both DC and Seattle. Bill, you see Vegas upsetting anybody else the next 2 weeks of the season?
Sure. Vegas is a decent team. With McClendon, they're playing pretty well. But let's not forget, St. Louis was playing with a backup quarterback. So Nick Tiano was playing, and he didn't play great, but he didn't play terrible. So got the win. So can Vegas beat teams? Sure. They're playing much better than they had been early in the season. McClendon kind of took a step back. We saw Dormady had a great week last week. McClendon had a great week last week. He takes a step back. So we got to see him play a little bit better there at quarterback for Vegas, but they can beat people. But I don't know what's going on with AJ McCarron, man. That's the big question because St. Louis is locked in that crazy battle for those playoff spots there in their division.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I went ahead and put it across the screen. Nick Tiano gets the start. AJ McCarron injured his shoulder in week 7, and I didn't think it was that severe, but did not make the trip here for this home game because there's a hub, I believe, is at San Antonio, where they're all do their training throughout the week. So AJ McCarron did not make the trip to St. Louis for his home game as Nick Tiano gets to start again. As you can see, 194 yards passing with a touchdown, but he also had 2 interceptions. He ran the ball a little more than we see AJ McCarron running. Brian Hill had himself a decent day. Hakeem Butler sort of, I want to say, disappeared, but he did catch that touchdown late in this game that brought St. Louis back within 3 to start overtime, or at least to create overtime, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Listen, St. Louis improves to 6-2. They're right up there with DC for that number 2 spot in the North. Vegas falls to 2-6. There's 2 more weeks left in the season. St. Louis wins out. They're in the playoffs. Do you see St. Louis winning out?
I haven't looked at their schedule.
Why?
But can they win out? They're not playing DC.
I know they
played them twice already.
I know they play Seattle this coming week.
All right, let's look. They play Seattle. That one's huge.
Yeah, that's a big game.
And then against Orlando. So yes, St. Louis can, and they're both at home, so they can definitely win out and go to the playoffs.
I mean, Orlando beat DC. That means that at any week they can beat anybody.
Sure. I mean, Orlando's been playing better. They played really well against DC and then became Orlando again this week. So
yeah,
I mean, what are you going to get? Which team do you get? When they play in St. Louis, and it's none of the games matter for Orlando anymore. So they're just playing to play out for individual effort, just to show out.
Or they just want to ruin somebody's playoff hopes.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, you're looking at the game next week is insane. The Seattle Sea Dragons and the St. Louis Battlehawks in the Battle Dome. That place goes crazy. That is basically a playoff game next week between those two teams because they are fighting for the second spot. DC Defenders don't have anybody to play coming down the stretch. They play Arlington and the Brahmas, and the Brahmas can't find anything on offense. So that last spot is going to go to St. Louis or Seattle. So next week, I mean, golly, what is that? Sunday at 3, Ryan. Thank goodness we're not on a ship.
No kidding. We're gonna miss like week 10 of the XFL, and we might miss the first playoff games for the XFL. We might miss the semifinals of the XFL playoffs.
There are sports on the ship. There is a sports bar, so we could go possibly, but they show a lot of soccer and cricket, unfortunately.
Well, the guys that are in our group, we can go watch the NFL draft, and the girls can go.
If they'll show it, we'll have to have a conversation about that, about cruise ships and sports rights, because I've had that conversation.
Oh man, we haven't had that conversation yet. Yeah. Nevertheless, no easy way to segue. First of all, if you're watching the stream, make sure you leave a comment for us. We can read it on the air. Interact with us. Let us know if you got a question about anything we're talking about or anything you want us to add to what we're talking about. We love the interaction, so let's hear some feedback. Next up on the slate of games from Week 8. The Houston Roughnecks going to San Antonio, looking to stay alive and keep pace for the South Division, because really we talked about it last week. Who wants to win the XFL South? Who wants to make the playoffs of those 4 teams? Houston squeaks out a win here. Looking at some stats, Houston's offense has disappeared. 162 total yards to 280 for San Antonio. Houston led the game in penalties with 11-7 for San Antonio. And San Antonio rushed for 128 yards to Houston's 25, and they still lost. But again, this game goes to overtime, similarly to the way Vegas St. Louis did. We didn't have an XFL game go to overtime before this weekend, and this weekend, as Bill mentioned, we had 2. Houston led this game 15-6 going into the fourth quarter. San Antonio kicked a game-tying field goal with 7 seconds left to force the overtime. The only team to convert an overtime conversion from either team was Houston. Houston improves to 5-3. San Antonio falls to 2-6, and they are basically just about on the outside looking in at the South Division at this point, not tied with Orlando, because Orlando lost this week. Just one game up from Orlando. Still not mathematically out of it, but really on that last leg for San Antonio. Bill, let's talk about Houston first. We got a few more viewers. Make sure you leave a comment for us so we can interact with you during the show.
Yeah, say hi. You got to say hi, or else we don't know you're there.
Yeah, at least give us a hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Bill, what's going on in Houston? Like
they stink, man. What happened?
This team was at one point a favorite to win the championship, and now you've got Brandon Silvers, 2 interceptions with 2 touchdowns, less than 150 passing yards in this game. Bryson Allen, who we hadn't heard much from this week, he gets the lead in rushing yards in this game with 12 over Max Borghi's 10. Neither one of them get the ball going on the ground. Your leading receiver is Justin Smith with 30 receiving yards in this game. I think at this point, they might need to divide the game from east to west, or at least divide the teams from east to west.
I told you it's not going to be fair.
To get a better XFL championship, because right now, Houston has the best record in the South at 5-3, and they look god awful. What do they need to? What do they need to do to have a chance in the playoffs here?
I'll give you the name, and I think this is the only thing I can figure out. See, Houston was a dynamic offense at the beginning of the season. They lost a player, and we talked about it off the air this week. They lost a player, and he had 250 yards receiving in the first 5 games. I mean, the first game he wasn't great. I mean, he had some really good games, and then he also threw a touchdown pass because he was a quarterback at LSU before he ended up playing in the XFL. Now he's playing wide receiver. John Trey Kirkland. Yep. He got hurt, and since he got hurt, they've been bad. That's I don't know if one guy makes that big of a difference, but it seems like it did with Houston. That just seems like what's going on. He had stats, and he was playing really well, and he was fun to watch when Houston was playing well. And he's been hurt, and they've been bad. They've lost the offense. They can't run. They're terrible running. Gosh, Max Borghi, I talked about him at the beginning of the season. I love the guy at Washington State. So fun to watch in college. It's terrible. It's just so bad.
When you got a guy, your leading rusher is averaging 3 yards per carry.
Yeah.
Your second leading rusher is averaging less than 2. You're not going to get much going there.
John Trey Kirkland is still 3rd on the team in receiving yards, and he hasn't played in three weeks, and part of that game. So he only played just over 4 weeks.
Yeah, Bill, we're not going to talk about San Antonio because
they're just terrible. Jack Cohn needs to stop throwing to the other team. He needs somebody needs to put him in a room with his uniform that he's going to be wearing that week and just let him sit in there for like 8 hours before the game and just say, only throw to that uniform. Don't throw to the other one.
It's like if you're in high school and you're having a fumbling issue. Now they're going to make you carry a football around the school. And throughout the day, your teammates are going to come and punch it out. And if you get it punched out at any point during the day, you're doing laps at school, at the end of, to start practice.
Yeah.
Listen, San Antonio falls to 2-6. Again, 1 game up on Orlando for missing the playoffs. At this point, it's going to be Arlington and Houston out of the South in the playoffs. And, I mean, they put up 18 and 17 points this week. That doesn't bode well for either one of those teams against one of these 2 teams to potentially make the XFL championship. The DC Defenders take on the Seattle Sea Dragons last week.
Game of the year. Game of
the year.
It's in that Orlando. DC somehow plays great games. I don't know what it is. They're really good, but they still win. But that Orlando Guardians game against DC the week before was fantastic. Great game. Probably game of the year. This one, if it's not game of the year, it's second place, and they're like this. Because this game was unbelievable.
This game was the only game that we chose differently from each other last week.
Yes, we did.
I took Seattle to win. Listen, DC took a 7-point lead with 2 minutes and 10 seconds left to play in this game. Seattle scored with half a minute left, Bill.
It was great.
They instead of going for 1, they went for 2 and did not get it.
It took a sack. That's terrible.
You can't take a sack there.
No.
Let's look at total yardage here. Seattle outgained 354 to 323 DC Defenders. The penalties were almost dead even, 8-7. Seattle leads that category. And the rushing yards again, DC 87, Seattle 53. Not a whole lot going on the ground from the running back perspective. But DC continues to impress with Jordan Ta'amu, 4 touchdowns, almost 250 passing yards in this game, still moving the ball on his feet. And then Abram Smith didn't have a great yards per carry in this game, but found the end zone again. The story here is the guy that I told y'all to look out for last week, Chris Blair, who blew up in week 7, blew up in week 8 again. Over 140 yards receiving, another touchdown to add this week. Just it looks like the outside of having a struggling defense, DC has found it on offense, and they're not slowing down, Bill.
They've got 2 wide receivers in the top 5 in receiving yards.
Lucky Jackson and Chris Blair?
Correct. Yeah. And Lucky Jackson, obviously, and I talk about him every single week. He's one of my favorite players in the league. Dude has 8 20-yard catches this season out of his 31. So he's a big play receiver. Odd part is he only has 3 touchdowns, but I love that guy. And Chris Blair is showing that he can do it too. He's averaging 21.4 yards per reception. So that's freaking fantastic. And we thought they were a running team. Huh.
We did.
Au contraire, mon frere. Like, that's welcome to the passing team that we didn't know we had in the XFL.
We talked about it on the show at one point. The DC defenders were known for their running game, and they couldn't throw the ball. And there was a team, I can't remember who it was, that decided we're gonna zone in on the run game, and DC threw it all over them, and they have not stopped since. When you go to Seattle, most of their players led some sort of statistical category at some point this season. Ben DiNucci, their quarterback, has continued to impress. Another 300-yard day with 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception. Listen, Philip Lindsay, I don't know. I've screwed up the stat line here. Philip Lindsay comes in, makes his premiere in the XFL, finds the end zone, falls into the end zone.
It was kind of dumb.
Yeah, listen, and I don't know. He looks like an XFL player, Bill.
What does an XFL player look like, Ryan?
He looks like a guy that wants to impress. No, he wants to impress. He was ready to get out there. He had less than a week of practice. He found the end zone. Coming in for an injured Morgan Ellison. And all he did was find the end zone. You look at the receivers for Seattle. Juwan Green had a huge day. 7 catches, 142 yards, 2 touchdowns. They got a big game coming up this week, Bill. I don't want to spoil the last segment of the show. But can Seattle take the momentum of having these heartbreaking games every week? I mean, they still got a winning record. They're sitting at 5-3, while DC improves to 7-1 in this game. They obviously need to win this week against St. Louis.
I have such a problem, Ryan. I have such a problem. I absolutely hate. I'm sorry, this divisional BS crap. It is not right. This is terrible. They should have. Why not? When you have no idea what the teams are going to be at the beginning of the season, do you not put all 8 teams, a la a college football conference, and just go, hey,
the NBA? The NBA has the Eastern and Western Conference, but it's ranked from 1 to 8. Like, that's how the NBA does it. Like, you don't have division winners. You don't have divisions.
Sure. But we don't. They don't have. They shouldn't have had If you want divisions, have divisions. Fine, I don't care. That's weird. There's no point. You don't know what the teams are going to be. Why did you do this? You could have had 4 terrible teams on one side. They're lucky enough that one of the teams on one side is okay.
Yeah,
or very good. Sorry, one of it's very good. The other one, but they're lucky about it because they could have been terrible. Like, what if San Antonio replaces the DC Defenders on that side of just those teams are switched. That side of the bracket is awful, and you're going to have 2 teams that play for nothing because this side, whoever comes out of this side, is going to destroy them. It's terrible. It was a terrible idea.
So it's similar. It's similar to the idea in the NFL that you can win a division with a losing record and still host a playoff game. The XFL is going to find the conundrum where the best 4 teams are not in the playoffs.
Right. In year 1 of this iteration, that's sad. Because the reality is the Arlington Renegades are nowhere near as good as St. Louis or Seattle. They're not even close.
Yeah.
And both of those teams beat the Arlington Renegades 10 times out of 10. And one of those teams is not going to make the playoffs, and Arlington is. That's just dumb. That's not good.
So before
I hate to crap on the XFL because I love it.
No, in this format, great.
In this format, I pray that Arlington surprises us and beats Houston, which is possible because both of those teams are pretty bad.
Here's
right
the great
now.
thing about the XFL. They seem to be innovative. They seem to listen. They seem to
Yeah.
want to succeed. So they may see what happens this year and make a change next year. That's
Yeah.
the top 4 teams to get into the playoffs.
But aren't you sad? I mean, one of those two teams, the St. Louis Battlehawks or the Seattle Sea Dragons, are done in 2 weeks.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, it's a travesty.
Like, like terrible.
Well, having
Sad.
said that, before we get into the final segment of the show, Bill, if you had to go out on a ledge and pick one of those teams to miss the playoffs, who are you taking? Are you taking Seattle? You're taking Seattle
right
to be
now.
out?
Yeah, I think Seattle because I think it's going to be easy. Well, St. Louis is at home. You know what though, Ryan? We have to pick games. Yeah. Oh, it makes it tough. I think Seattle's a better team. It's whether or not AJ McCarron plays this week. Does AJ McCarron play? We
That's
don't
a huge
know.
key.
They don't tell us that. They're not going to tell us that towards the end of the week and beginning of the game here. So we don't know at this point if AJ McCarron's playing. So if he does, and they play in St. Louis, I feel like St. Louis should have the upper hand. But I've seen St. Louis lay eggs in the Battle Dome. Like I feel like they've played poorly, even though they have 35,000 people screaming their heads off, which is way more than any other team. Actually, by the way, I have those statistics. We should talk about that for a minute too.
Yeah.
But because by the way, this week was the highest attended week in the history of the XFL.
Oh, that's awesome.
This version of the XFL. It was that they had more average attendance this week than any other week in the season, which is this far down the road. That's impressive.
Yeah. No.
But,
real quick,
I feel like we could see St. Louis lay an egg. But if I were to pick one right now because of their playing in St. Louis, I think Seattle misses the playoffs. Plus, they're a game behind.
So we're so quick to forget that St. Louis needed McCadgen.
I know what you mean.
McCarron Magic to win the first 2 weeks of
How
the season.
about McCadgen Marin?
Yeah. McCarron Magic to win the first 2 games of the season.
Merrick.
Or they could be looking at the outside from the outside looking in at this point.
Yeah.
So if I had to take it, I'd say Seattle makes the playoffs and St. Louis loses out, or at least misses out on the playoffs.
Fair.
But like you said, it is in a huge part due to whether or not AJ McCarron plays or not. Bill, you want to go over those attendance numbers real quick before we move on to the last?
No, they're
of the show?
extremely tiny. If you can see them, they're like the worst numbers ever. That's like a graphic, and the numbers are really, really small. So give me a second. I can zoom though. This week, they averaged between all sites, and this obviously is going to depend on who's playing at home because the St. Louis team boosts the sites. But the highest.
Oh, and if you're playing in Vegas or Orlando, that's going to bring them all down.
Bring it down, right? So you had the home teams this week were. I don't know, see if I can get it here. They were St. Louis, Seattle, San Antonio, and Orlando. So Orlando is the one that's going to bring it down, right? Because they're the ones that don't average that much. Now, by the way, Orlando has had a game that they had over 12,000 people there. So that's not terrible.
Was it their first home game?
It was their first home game.
It was their first home game. I knew it was their first home game. Of course.
Since then, they've dropped down. They had 10,000 the second week. By then, they were 0-3, and that was when they went 0-4 at home with 10,000, almost 11,000 people there. This week, they had 7,789, which they were up over the previous week. So obviously, they beat. Actually, the DC Defenders game was their least amount of people in the stadium they had all season.
Well, they knew they were going to get blown out by DC.
Right.
You know,
San Antonio had 12,000 people there. There were almost 12,000, 11,800 in Seattle. And, of course, St. Louis, the gem of the XFL in regards to attendance at their home games, had 35,167, which is insane.
Can you imagine going to an XFL game in St. Louis?
That's not it would be super fun. It's not it's crazy too. It's not just like they're going nuts the entire time. It's not just, sit down and have a good time. They're going crazy. Their high was 38.3, by the way. That was the record, 38.310. Anyway,
if they host a playoff game, it'll be huge.
Oh yeah, but they're not going to. I mean, unless DC loses twice, but we'll get into that. 16,768 was the average between all 4 sites this week. So that's pretty good. It's not bad. It's the highest they've had all season by about 700 people per game. So, yeah, pretty good.
Good stuff. The XFL trying to finish strong here. Again, listening to the podcast, this is normally the time that we take our final break before we go into the week 9 predictions of the XFL and the week 1 predictions of the USFL. But we're not taking a break. We're going straight into it. And let's start off here. Players to watch out for in week 9 of the XFL. Let's start off here if I can get this going here. The first game on the docket, the eliminated from the playoffs 2-6 Vegas Vipers at the 5-3 Houston Roughnecks. Saturday at 12:30 kickoff. Bill, who you got to watch out for in this game, and who you got winning this game?
I mean, do we have to do who to watch out for again? I mean,
it's probably the same guys.
It really is. I mean, it's the same offenses we watch every single week.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you it's the quarterbacks that I'm looking at. Jalen McClendon for Vegas, Brandon Silvers for Houston. McClendon's come on strong, a little too late. Brandon Silvers needs to get it going for Houston to sort of build some momentum going into the playoffs.
Right.
Bill, who you got between this game between Vegas and Houston?
I think they both stink right now. Wow. Houston's just so bad on offense right now. But I don't want – we're tied now, so I can't lose to you at this point.
How did we not mention the fact that with the one game that Bill and I picked differently last week?
Wait, how did we not mention? You didn't want to bring it up. I know.
I didn't want to bring it up. Ooh, you. Bill and I both sit at 21-11 picking XFL games on the season after your guy took Seattle like a schmuck.
Wow,
with you, Bill.
Easy now. You're being too hard on yourself.
I'm going to beat myself up bad. It's.
I've been chipping back. I've been chipping away, man. You know that it's every week. I've been like, I gotta get. Been chipping away.
Let's see if we pick this game differently. Who you got between Vegas and Houston?
I think. Wow, they're so bad.
Get cute.
I know. I really want to go with Vegas. I think Houston has to get it right. But they're just so bad. But I have to stay with Houston. I have to. They're just. If I was to power rank these teams, I would pick Houston above Vegas. So it makes no sense, even though I just feel like Houston's not playing well. And is there an upset watch here? Absolutely. I think McClendon, if he plays like he did 2 weeks ago, Vegas wins this game. He just didn't show me enough last week, and I think that Houston pulls this one out. They're at home. It helps.
Yeah, I'm taking Houston as well. Next game on the docket, another game where a team has already been eliminated. And
I love this one.
For all intents and purposes, if Orlando wins this game, San Antonio's gone. I'm going to give you my players to watch out for. For Orlando, it's Eli Rogers, best game of the season last week.
Oh, yeah.
For San Antonio, Jaquez Patrick, 96 yards and a touchdown last week for San Antonio.
I got a different guy for Orlando because I've been having fun with this. Cody Latimer's really started to show up. You spotlighted him early in the season, the tight end. I mean, tight end / wide receiver, whatever he is.
The hybrid guy.
He's really started to show up more and more now that Dormity's the passer there in Orlando. So I think it's fun to watch him. He was a NFL quality talent and a decent one, and has kind of slid down and is now in the XFL, obviously a minor league. Watch that guy. He's been fantastic recently. He had a nice 44-yard touchdown against DC 2 weeks ago on a crossing, like a little drag route. And he's been really, really good. He's much faster than a tight end and a little bit smaller than a wide receiver, so he's fun to watch. So watch him there in Orlando, and I think he's going to put on a bit of a show. For San Antonio, watch their coach. Hines Ward is pissed off the entire game because he is just so angry at how bad his team is. I'm serious. He just screams at the officials. He screams at the officials. He is just angry. Like he's going to, push out a turd or something at some point because he is just angry the whole time. Like it's really, really sad, which I liked Hines Ward. I do like Hines Ward. He seems like he's a good guy, but he's so mad that his team is bad. So watch him. I think that's kind of I don't want to pick a player because they're so crappy. But
he's got to chew on the fact that he's not in Pittsburgh and he's not in Gotham anymore. For Dark Knight Rises. Yeah, anyway,
so bad.
So I've taken San Antonio. Bill, who are you taking in this game?
I'm taking Orlando. I think Orlando beats San Antonio in San Antonio. Jack Cohen is awful. They're not going to get anybody to play quarterback for them. They have 5, count them 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 guys have played quarterback for the San Antonio Brahmas this season. And Jack Cohen is the worst of them. And he's probably going to start. If not, maybe Paxton Lynch. Ooh, get excited about that one. Maybe they can cut him after the game. Or they'll bench him for Jack Cohen. How much fun would that be? But I think Orlando wins that game.
Well, you might get to take a lead this week if Orlando is able to pull off the upset. The next game we're talking about in the XFL, a Sunday kickoff at 12 o'clock. Arlington 4-4 at DC. Arlington needs to win.
Just go.
Come on. Listen.
Yeah, I'm going to take Arlington and Luis Perez. Come on. What are you doing here?
All right. This is going to be the game of the weekend. 5-3 Seattle at 6-2 St. Louis Sunday, 3:00 kickoff. As Bill mentioned earlier in the show, very, very well could be a playoff game here, an elimination game of sorts. If St. Louis is able to knock off Seattle, I think that pretty much knocks Seattle out of the playoff race.
That would.
So
I think so.
Bill,
I think, yeah.
Having said that, playing at home with St. Louis, Seattle fighting for their lives because for whatever reason, even with a winning record, they could miss the playoffs. Who you taking between Seattle and
Wait.
And
do what? Who am I taking? Hang on a second. Let me see if I can. I'm going to give you a Lee Corso moment, but because it's.
Do you have a St. Louis headgear or something you're going to put on?
Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be so cool if I did? But I mean, it would be like me kind of to do something like wish I did because I would never buy that garbage. What a stupid logo. But anyway, because it looks like this. Because that's who I'm taking. I'm taking the Sea Dragons. We're going to go Sea Dragons on this one. I think St. Louis lays an egg this week. I do. I think they have AJ McCarron issues. He's going to be hungover, and he's going to disappoint his children. And that's too bad.
That is a harsh take. He is going to disappoint his
That's
children.
all he's here for. That's all he's here for is trying to make himself play in front, having himself play in front of his kids. And he has been great. I'm a fan. He's been really good all season long. 17 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I believe those are his stats. It might be different because that might have been 2 weeks ago, but I think it is. But wait, I've got to say, I am right. Sound, it's 17-4.
I've got to say,
he's going to disappoint his kids.
Saved a sound drop. He's going to disappoint his kids. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great
his boys are going to be really upset, but his wife might leave him. We don't know, but we'll see what happens after the game. But I think Seattle wins this game.
Well, we mentioned that the XFL is in week 9. We also mentioned the USFL is in week 1. And so even though we're throwing darts at a dartboard, we're going to pick the USFL games here. The first game is 4:30.
You didn't pick the Seattle Sea Dragons game.
Yeah, I did. I took Seattle.
You did? We're the same all week? We're the same all week?
No, we've got the one change. You got Orlando over San Antonio.
Okay, good. So my team, I'll wear my T-shirt that doesn't fit. By the way, look, I'm wearing a Dolphins T-shirt right now. I wear football T-shirts all the time. I bought an Orlando Guardians T-shirt. I was so excited. You know this, Ryan. It is the worst fitting T-shirt I've ever. I literally was going to wear it on Saturday for the game, be like, "Yay, go Guardians!" And I was embarrassed to wear it in front of my wife. It fits that poorly. Like she's seen me without my clothes on, and I was.
You'd rather be shirtless.
I'd rather be naked than wear that shirt. It was that bad. So I'm getting a Guardians tattoo. No kidding. That would be the worst.
Oh, that's so funny.
Maybe it's that bad. I don't know how you can make a T-shirt fit worse than this thing does. It's like a smock. It's awful.
Maybe it's my apologies. Maybe I didn't outright.
I'm gonna let you try it on.
I'm taking no, because it's now that's an Orlando shirt. No, I am taking
you
Seattle.
Wear a Braves shirt. Come on, you have no shame.
The Braves are winners, dude. The Braves have more than a win this week. All right, let's get into USFL. We're on late. USFL week 1, the Philadelphia Stars at the Memphis Showboats. 4:30 Saturday kickoff. Literally couldn't tell you anybody, so I'm literally just throwing my dart at the dartboard here. I mean, listen, I don't know anybody that's playing for either one of these teams, Bill.
Really?
I mean, if you look at even RotoWire, shout out to RotoWire, they don't have the
Who's at home? Who's at home?
Memphis.
I mean, we call it home. Oh, they are actually at home because
Memphis. Yeah, that's why I was going to take Memphis.
So wait, Philadelphia Stars and Memphis?
And Memphis at Memphis. I'm taking Memphis because they're at home.
You know what? I clicked on something it's last year. I was like, Memphis doesn't even exist.
Another reason why the USFL claiming that they're bringing real football back. Yeah, you're bringing real football back.
It's like, what are we talking about?
Teams in year 2.
It was the Tampa Bay Bandits who were the Memphis Stars. They moved from Tampa Bay to Memphis.
They were so bad, and they were so non-profitable that they were like, we don't want to be in Tampa anymore. Let's go to Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Lawler.
All right, it's Memphis versus who? This is how updated I am on this.
Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Stars.
All right, Philadelphia. All right, give me the Philadelphia Stars.
All right. By the way, we're doing this on the fly here. Should we incorporate this into the XFL stats, or should we do this separately so that when the XFL season's over, we end that and start this one? I think we should just go ahead and include these into this. Just extend the spring and summer, the winter and spring football.
Okay,
leagues.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So our XFL picks won't end in 2 weeks or 4 weeks when this
Yeah, it's
championship's
basically a
done.
tie at this point anyway. So
Yep. All right. So yeah, not to mention we're getting some separation here with Memphis and Philadelphia. The next game on the docket here for the USFL in week 1, the New Jersey Generals at Birmingham Stallions, 7:30 kickoff on Saturday. They're playing in Birmingham. Bill, who you taking, Jersey or Birmingham?
well, here, let me give you this one. This is the matchup of the two teams that finished at the top of their divisions last season.
Okay.
So both of these teams finished 9-1. Now, granted, New Jersey Generals finished 9-1 with Luis Perez as their quarterback. He's now quarterback of the Arlington Renegades after going through Vegas.
Yeah.
So they, I believe, have a rookie quarterback. They're the ones that took. I'm not 100% sure. So in that respect, give me
DeAndre Johnson.
Begin.
Is it DeAndre Johnson?
I have no
You're thinking
idea.
of?
Sure, but give me the Birmingham Stallions. I'll look.
Oh, you're
I'm not
taking
giving it to
Birmingham.
you, though. I'm not.
I'm going
giving
to
it to
take.
you, though.
Listen, I'm going to take Birmingham as well. This is turned into a blank show here, because of
I mean, how do we know? We don't know the players. The players, a lot of them are, like I said, they're draft picks. They're draft picks that were coming into the college football draft this season. So you're going to have a whole lot of players that are super young that we've never seen play football other than in colleges that nobody watched, like Incarnate Word. Did you know they had a college
I've
football
heard of
team?
it.
I didn't.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You have not heard of it.
I've heard of Incarnate Word. What are you talking
Their
about?
football team? You probably heard of the school.
No, yeah, I mean, school football team. There's all the same thing.
You don't know if they played baseball or not.
We're doing this live. I'll tell you why I'm taking Birmingham over who are the New Jersey, because they have 3 Clemson players and 2 South Carolina players.
That's so terrible.
I'm taking Memphis over Philadelphia because they have a South Carolina player on Memphis. That's how I'm picking my games going forward.
No. Just terrible.
All right, let's move on to game 3 here. This game will also be played in Memphis, but it takes the Michigan Panthers at the Houston Gamblers playing in Memphis this weekend. Bill, throw your dart at the dartboard. Who you got here, Michigan or Houston?
This isn't fair. All right, Michigan or Houston. Michigan finished 2-8 last season. They were really good, and Houston was 3-7 in the other division, so they were really good. So this is a great matchup picked by the real football makers at the USFL. Give me Michigan. Michigan, because they're going to start that kid from Incarnate. Wait a minute, that's not the right pick. Hang on.
Oh, nope, you already said it.
All right, yeah, give me. I'll take.
I'm taking Michigan because they have a former Clemson Tiger, a former Gamecock.
We're not doing that.
Citadel Bulldog. I'm taking Michigan. No, that's what I'm doing. We're going to see how this strategy plays off. The last game on the docket, so we can mercifully get out of this segment and off the show. The Pittsburgh Maulers taking on the New Orleans Breakers. Bill, no Gamecocks, no Tigers, no Bulldogs on either one of these teams. This game will be played in Birmingham, closer to a home team for New Orleans than Pittsburgh. I'm taking New Orleans here to win this game over Pittsburgh, who decided to go through, like you said, a logo change, an image change after a subpar last season. Bill, he taking Pittsburgh against New Orleans Sunday at 6:30 kickoff.
New Orleans might have the coolest logo in the XFL because nobody knows what the heck a breaker is. Is that? I think it's a wave, right? It's a wave.
Yeah, that sounds about right. They could have done like a, well, it would be WWE related, a Braun Breaker logo, or like
the New Orleans Surf and Safari,
a Wreck-It Ralph like image, like Wreck-It Ralph,
breaking it.
Yeah,
but with that being said, I will also take the New Orleans Breakers. And the reason for that, Ryan, is because they do return most of their rosters in the USFL. That's kind of how this whole thing works.
Yeah.
And New Orleans Breakers went 6-4 last season, and the Pittsburgh Maulers were a mauling 1-9.
Yep. That's why, I vaguely took them for that same reason.
That's why they changed their logo, because they're trying to go into the witness protection program, so nobody knows who that.
Nobody remembers how bad they were last year. Bill, anything you want to pitch for In the Zone Racing this coming week?
Let's see. This week we have Money on Tuesday. Once again, go to inthezonaracing.com or facebook.com//In the Zone Racing. We go live at 9 p.m. every Monday and Tuesday night. Coming up Thursday, tomorrow night, we're going to go live at 10 p.m. We're actually broadcasting another leagues series called the Sarah Super Series. Sim Auto Racing Association actually has us do their broadcast. That's pretty cool. So we'll be live at 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Those races are wild because they are open setup races. So the guys get to build their own setups. They all have teams and everything. It's pretty crazy. So those are fun. So we're busy on Thursdays and Mondays and Tuesdays. You can check us out / In the Zone Racing on Facebook.
Good stuff. Yeah. PJ, Steve, and I don't have a plan on what we're doing on this next week's show. Banker Bill and I we're going to talk XFL. We're going to sort of recap USFL, but I think we're going to spend some time previewing the NFL draft. Because we do not have a show the week of the NFL draft.
I know, it would be so fun too. I had this whole thing in my head, Ryan. We would go live during the draft and do like a draft watch and like react to just have people hang out with us, or maybe we would just drink beer and watch the draft together here on the computer. I have no idea. But I thought that would be fun. And guess what? We're going to be on a ship.
If it wasn't for the fact that we would probably going to be inebriated at the time the draft starts, may not be able to watch as the draft starts. The Wi-Fi on the ship doesn't apparently support streaming.
Yeah,
so we're not going to be able to stream the draft as we go. Otherwise, I could say I could bring my laptop, bring a microphone, and we can do it from there. But I don't think it's going to work.
I'm not going to. It's usually really, really bad.
Well, nevertheless, so yeah, again, next week, we got another wrestling show with PJ Steven, and then we're going to do an NFL draft sort of preview special next Thursday for the football show. Make sure you check out In the Zone Racing tonight if you're listening on the podcast, tomorrow night if you're watching live, and then again, In the Zone Racing Monday and Tuesday night for some fun stuff they got going on there. We've kept you long enough. We've gone late. I think every show for the last 4 shows, the live shows tend to go late. Thanks for everybody to join. Pedro Gillian or Gillen joined late, so thank you for tuning in when you did. Thanks for everybody who listened. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever it is that you're listening or watching this show. And next time we go live with the football shows, let's get some interaction. Let's hear what you guys want to talk about.
No comments. We had viewers, no comments, Ryan. That was disappointing.
Yeah, the one comment we got, we'll bring it back on the screen here, was nothing about football be more entertaining.
I did that. That's my fault.
Football was on.
That was my fault. Yeah.
Banker Bill came in hard on the wrestling show, and PJ was going to give it back to him.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us tonight, this morning, this afternoon, wherever it is that you're listening to the show. We'll see you next week right here on Tap House and Touchdowns. For Banker Bill, it's your guy, Bully Rye, and I'll be around.